As the world watches the first steps of this delicate truce unfold, the coming hours will decide whether this agreement truly signals the beginning of an enduring calm or just another fleeting pause in a cycle of conflict that has defied peace for generations. Well, for more on this, we are joined by Scott Lucas, a professor of international politics who's joining us live from Ireland. Thank you very much for joining us today, Scott. Let's look firstly at this ceasefire deal. We expect it to be ratified by Israel later and will come into effect. Do you think this is going to be a lasting peace, or is this another temporary ceasefire like we've seen in the past?
Well, first of all, we hold out hope that we get a pause in the mass killing in Gaza and the return of those 20 Israeli hostages, as well as the 28 bodies. But we also need to be realistic where we are. First of all, we do not have a ceasefire yet. We will not have a ceasefire until the Israeli cabinet meets tonight and formally accepts this. There are a couple of far-right ministers in Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet who oppose the ceasefire, but at this point it looks like they will not leave the government and bring it down over that. When we get the ceasefire, however, it is going to take a few days to confirm the details of the exchange of the Israeli hostages for the release of those 2,000 Palestinians who are in Israeli prisons. Right now, there is discussion right now of who those Palestinians will be. For example, one of them is a Palestinian national leader, Marwan Barghouti, who has been held for more than 20 years by the Israelis. And Hamas is calling for him to be amongst those who are freed. If that all goes well, yes, we are looking at Monday for that exchange to take place. But then the really hard work takes place, because the Trump plan for Gaza is actually a sketch. Beyond the hostages for detainees swap, it is vague regarding the extent of the Israeli withdrawal. It is vague regarding the timings over disarmament of Hamas and how that is to be achieved. It is vague over the arrangements for the governance and security of Palestine, of Gaza, including whether or not Israel has a veto over certain Palestinians being in the day-to-day administration. All of those are issues which are going to be even more difficult to confirm than this initial phase that we're talking about. So yes, there is cause for celebration in terms of the immediate relief from the mass killing, but there is still a long road ahead.
Yes, absolutely, Scott. Of course, that uncertainty still there. Let's look at Benjamin Netanyahu now. Where does this deal leave him? He, of course, as you've mentioned, there are members of his cabinet and other lawmakers in Israel who didn't want to see this war end. They wanted to see Hamas destroyed and having no way of repeating a horrific attack like what we saw on October the 7th of 2023. What's next for Israel and what's next for Benjamin Netanyahu?
I think in terms of the next few days, there is a space for Netanyahu here, even though he did not want a ceasefire. I mean, let's be honest here, Benjamin Netanyahu, like those far-right ministers, really was looking at a long-term military occupation of Gaza. But he's gotten this space simply because of the pressure of the Trump administration, backed up, or indeed fostered by the Arab states, especially the Gulf states. That means that far-right ministers who might object to the ceasefire not only have to take on Netanyahu, they have to take on Trump. And I don't think they'll do that. They're not giving these signals they do that. But this is why I emphasize that after that immediate hostage for detainee release is when it gets a bit, well, that's when the rubber hits the road, as we say. Because, for example, one of those far-right ministers, the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, has already said, once all the hostages are freed, then Israel must destroy Hamas. In other words, Israel must go back on the offensive in Gaza. Now, quite clearly, that is not consistent with a long-term ceasefire, let alone a political settlement. So what happens at that point? That, in other words, there are just these serious questions that we're not going to really see probably until next week.
Yes, and Scott, as we sort of wrap up on this, I've just got one short question to you relating to Donald Trump. Does this ceasefire deal, once it is implemented, cement Trump's legacy and push him closer potentially to that Nobel Peace Prize?
I leave that for others to decide. I mean, Donald Trump desperately wants the Nobel Peace Prize because Barack Obama got one. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, involved in these negotiations, who is backed by money from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, wants the investment opportunity of a stable Gaza. But sometimes good things happen from self-centered motives. What I would say is this, that the facts are that Donald Trump had backed Israel all the way up until early September with this military mass killing in Gaza. The real catalyst here was Israel bombing and trying to kill Hamas negotiators in Qatar, because that, of course, is a Gulf state which is a U.S. ally. It has the largest U.S. air base in the Middle East. After that bombing, the Gulf states, including Qatar, went to Trump and the administration and said, you better do something now, because if you don't join us in trying to get a ceasefire, the whole region is going to be unstable. That was the real catalyst here for where we are today, rather than Donald Trump leading the proceedings.
Yes, Scott Lucas, thank you ever so much for your insights. We really appreciate you giving the time speaking to us.
Thank you. Peace to you and all your listeners.
Want the facts?
The latest developments?
News that gets straight to the point.
Well, we've got all three just for you. This is Firstpost Live, a brand new show, your window into what really matters.
Don't miss it.